During the Japanese internment, the U.S. government was able to justify the denial of basic civil rights to the Japanese Americans because the Americans were paranoid, but were still able to fight a war for freedom throughout the globe. The Japanese internment all started after the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. After the bombing in December 1941, rumors started spreading, which was fueled by being prejudiced. The Americans then started plotting against the Japanese Americans to sabotage the war effort. Americans worried that the Japanese ancestry would act as spies for the Japanese government. The fear, not evidence, drove the U.S. to place over 127,000 in concentration camps for the duration of World War II. In 1942, the Roosevelt administration was pressured to remove the Japanese Americans from the West Coast by farmers trying to move competition. In February 1942, Roosevelt signed the Exclusive Order 9066, forcing all Japanese to evacuate, excluding Hawaii. Even veterans from World War I were forced to leave their homes behind. Evacuation orders were posted in Japanese American communities, giving specific instructions on how to comply with the order. People sold their homes, stores, and their assets. Since it was rushed, citizens sold their properties for a fraction of what they paid for. Before the internment camps were built, there were temporary detention centers at stables or local racetracks for the Japanese Americans. They were used from late March through mid-October 1942. 10 camps in 7 western states were completed in California, Idaho, Utah, Arizona, Wyoming, Colorado, and Arkansas. The housings usually consisted of tar paper barbacks. The camps had harsh conditions, were overcrowded, had water shortages, and was substandard housing and exposure to extreme weather. The children of the Japanese Americans were forced to go to school. The adults had the option to work for $5 a day, but they didn't have to. If you tried to escape, you would get mowed down by the guards in the towers because they had barricades and they had curfews every night. The Japanese Americans were denied of basic rights such as freedom of speech, religion, press, and assembly, freedom of unreasonable searches and seizures, right to life, liberty, and property, right to call favorable witnesses, right to legal counsel, right to a speedy and public trial, right to reasonable bail, right to vote, right to equal protection under the law, and therefore. Jerome, Arkansas opened October 6, 1942, closed June 30th, 1944. They had a peak population of 8,497 people. Manzanar, California, opened March 21st, 1942, closed November 21st, 1945. First of 10 camps to open, initially a processing center, peak of 10,046 people. Mini Dhaka, Idaho, opened August 10, 1942, closed October 28, 1945, and they had a peak population of 9,397 people. 73 prisoners died in service. Poston, Arizona, opened May 8, 1942, closed November 28, 1945. They had a peak population of 17,814 people. 24 Japanese were held at Poston, later lost their lives in World War II. Poston was divided into 3 separate camps. Toll Lake, California, opened May 27, 1942, closed March 20, 1946. Peak population of 18,789 people. Prisoners held frequent protest demonstrations/strikes. Amachi, Colorado, opened August 24, 1942, closed October 15, 1945. There was 120 people that died the whole time it was opened. The Gila River in Arizona opened July 20, 1942, closed November 10, 1945. There was 97 students that graduated high school. About 1,000 prisoners worked in 8,000 acres of farmland growing vegetables and raised livestock. Heart Mountain, Wyoming opened August 12, 1942, closed November 10, 1945. 63 imprisoned for resisting the draft. They had 200 administration employees, 124 soldiers, 9 guard towers with high beam searchlights, and barbed wire fences. Robert, Arizona opened September 18, 1942, closed November 30, 1945, with a peak population of 8,475 people. Topaz, Utah opened September 11, 1942, closed October 31, 1945, with a peak population of 8,130 people. Fred Korematsu decided to challenge the legibility of the Executive Order 9066, but the Supreme Court ruled the action as justified as a wartime necessity. It was not until 1988 when the government attempted to apologize to the Japanese Americans. After the order was repealed, they felt that they couldn't return to their hometowns. Hostility against the Japanese remained high across the West Coast. Many villages had signs saying never to return. As a result, they scattered across the country. In formal apologies to the Japanese Americans in 1988, the U.S. government grants $1.6 million in reparations to all the remaining survivors of the Japanese. $20,000 were given to each remaining survivor. Also, the Japanese that survived were granted the nation's highest civilian honor, the Congressional Gold Medal. It was attended by dozens of survivors of the 100th Infantry Battalion, 442nd Regiment Combat Team, and the Military Intelligence Service. They held down the darkest period of American history, became some of the most decorated soldiers our nation has today.